Imagine packing your entire life into a car with your wife and kids and fleeing a collapsing regime in the dead of night, all because of Bitcoin. Today, we're breaking down one of the most jaw-dropping Bitcoin origin stories you'll ever hear, straight from Mauricio di Bartolomeo, I believe is his last name, co-founder of Ledn. You guys have seen me talk about Ledn recently, and ironically, Raoul just had him on the Journeyman podcast about 3 months ago. So this isn't about crypto, it's about survival, rebellion, and financial freedom. And many of us have never, and hopefully will never, experience hyperinflation, but Bitcoin truly is freedom from the fiat Ponzi collapse. So stay tuned. Tired of meme tokens that promise the moon but leave you holding the bag or just rug? It's time to flip the narrative. Flapjacks launched transparently with locked liquidity, token burns, and real-world utility like exclusive fitness perks. This stack is built to last. Forks divide, syrup binds. Join the stack at flapjacks.xyz. Hey guys, welcome back. Drip Coach here with Drip and Farm for Poverty, where we don't trust, we verify, and operate with integrity and transparency. So as I mentioned, this is from Raoul's Journeyman podcast. It's Mauricio di Bartolomeo, and he is the co-founder and CSO of Ledn. This origin story goes all the way back to 2016, where his brother introduced him to Bitcoin, and they were mining it during the hyperinflation collapse. So as other people were fleeing Venezuela, his brother, because he had heard it from a friend who was living in the US in Houston, told him about Bitcoin and introduced it to him and said, hey, you guys can mine this and make money off of it. And Venezuela at that time had like super cheap electricity. So they were able to basically create money from electricity, like out of thin air, as close to out of thin air as possible back in those days. So let's play a clip from that to give you guys an introduction on how that all started.
Free money. I applaud the spirit of fighting when the fight is fair, right? But in Venezuela, it wasn't a fair fight. My brother had gotten so much conviction around Bitcoin that he gave my dad pretty much like an ultimatum. And he was like, you either fund this or I'm leaving the house. In a matter of 2 hours, he has to pack his life into a car with his wife and 2 kids and transit the most dangerous stretch of road. And my family from that point on fled, but my family never went back. While I will always say that fighting Bitcoin and hyperinflation is a blessing, and I love the life that I live today, it's incredibly painful to have to separate your family.
That story alone explains why you've been so passionate about Bitcoin, right? Because it matters not as a business opportunity, it matters at a personal level, as a way to give not just financial freedom, but freedom to people that didn't exist.
The way we were able to opt out, I knew everyone would want the same.
That's the kind of conviction you cannot fake. Bitcoin for him wasn't just a trade, it was a ticket out of a collapsing regime. It was safety, security. When hyperinflation made survival impossible for his brother, basically it was Bitcoin that gave Mauricio, his family, a shot at freedom. And many of us have not had to make that decision, but that also explains why Ledn has survived the previous crypto downturns, collapses, whatever you want to call them, with Three Arrows Capital and Celsius and Terra Luna and FTX. He specifically, Mauricio, has this conviction, this understanding that Bitcoin is freedom. So it's super clear that he's not willing to risk that for anyone, because it literally transformed and saved his brother's life or his family's life and had them the ability to opt out. He was living in Canada at this time when he started looking more into it. His brother was living still in Venezuela, so he's the older brother, and his younger brother introduced it to him, but he was living in Canada and it wasn't quite as cheap to mine, so he was kind of working with his brother back home in Venezuela to get all this stuff done. And then that's when things basically take a turn for the worse, because as the Venezuelan government is collapsing in hyperinflation, let me find that clip, because actually it's amazing to hear it firsthand from someone what hyperinflation is and how it impacts you.
And so that was how my youngest brother finds out.
What was he doing beforehand, your youngest brother?
My youngest brother had just graduated university. And interestingly, I come from a very entrepreneurial family. And so my dad always wanted us to pursue setting up our own businesses. So every one of us, after we graduated, my dad acted as our angel. And we would basically have to pitch him on a business idea. And once he got behind it, he gave us a little angel check where the funds to kind of take a first crack at the bat. So I had taken my crack, my middle brother had taken his crack, and now it was my youngest brother's turn. And so he was at this point sourcing business ideas to present to my dad to basically do this his venture. And my dad really wanted him to leave the country. My family really wanted him to get out because by then I was out, my middle brother was out, and the country was just falling off. Everybody was forced selling and liquidating everything. This is why we had millions % inflation, because hyperinflation is not rational. Hyperinflation is emotional. And hyperinflation is a result of you losing all faith in the government being able to steer the ship. And you are basically market selling everything you can to take the money out. You don't really care what the price is. You stop doing the math because the exchange is moving so fast that whatever math you do won't be the settlement you get once you place the trade. So you just start basically thinking in extremes, and you just say, I want whatever you give me for it. And therefore, asset prices get completely depressed in real terms. Nominal terms, they might still be okay. But when you go and try to get the currency out, that's when you really get crushed, because the currency is what's getting debased to infinity. Nobody wants to hold it.
That's crazy. I had read a blog post about this. I forgot where this was impacted, but the explanation or the way to wrap your head around it is that you could sit down for a meal, and let's just say that meal is an average of $5 normally. It's $5. You sit down for the meal. By the time you order and your food comes to you, the price has already doubled, in some places tripled. By the time you finish your meal, it's doubled and tripled again. So from walking to the restaurant to leaving, you could see a 10x in price. So it's just unfathomable how quickly things just get out of control. And he goes in to mention that they start basically cracking down. So the government knows their currency is collapsing. So they start looking for citizens that are doing what they call hoarding items that are retaining value. So say you're keeping extra tires or light bulbs or toilet paper, for example, probably not in like Venezuela, but items that can carry some monetary value and you can barter and exchange with. The government comes looking for you to, enforce some law or rules because you're not allowed to hoard it. They need you to still utilize the currency, and they have to somehow maintain some kind of grip over this kind of lawless anarchy that's going on. And again, luckily, most of us in Western developed countries will probably never experience this, but this is a stark reality in other countries. And he mentions that. He's like, and that's probably kind of the good and the bad with those of you that are watching my content. Most people are in the US or in Europe. We cannot wrap our head around this. The bubble we live in, and that's why I really urge people to move overseas to a different developing country, because the bubble you live in makes you think that everything around you is the reality. But the stark reality, I've shown this before, and that's why I still have this drip coach moniker, is to empower the impoverished. 60% of the entire globe makes less than $10 a day. That's the majority. You making 70, 80, 100K a year, that's not the norm. That's not the standard. So your view of what normal is completely skewed by a smaller percentage of the population. So this is the reality in a lot of other places. They may not be experiencing hyperinflation, but they could be literally one regime away
from subsidies and getting dollars out the other side. It's like payback.
Poetic. It's poetic. And this is exactly what people in China were doing too. And this is exactly because a lot of these authoritarian/communist regimes, they buy your vote with subsidies. And Bitcoin is a very beautiful way of flying those subsidies and that attempt to purchase my will back on you and mirror it back to you, and basically use it to put more pressure on you to do the right thing. So when he starts mining it, clearly he's ecstatic because he's doing very, very well. And so he starts growing the mine. And as people come to him, he's the only guy in Venezuela walking around with a smile. Everyone else is forced liquidating everything, whereas my brother is saying, "Oh, you're leaving? Do you have any space available? Can I rent your industrial space? What's the electricity capacity
He's got
of
a
your
free money machine going?"
So then, not surprisingly, all of my brother's friends start saying, "What are you doing? Teach me more about this. How can you be in a position to rent a place where everyone else is giving them up for free and you were the one taking the lease? How?" And then
So naturally, that leads him to see an opportunity and capitalize on that. So his brother pretty much created an entire industry in Venezuela, I forgot, I think they're in Caracas. I don't remember what city, but it started to spread. And that's what leads to obviously kind of that initial clip that I played where he catches the eyes of the government. Because if you're doing financially well during a hyperinflation collapse and everybody else is panicking and you're buying and leasing industrial buildings just so that you can get electricity and then plugging in a bunch of miners, yeah, that's not going to go well in a situation like this.
Covert roadshow for them to learn how to identify these things. This was in December 2018. Not surprisingly, in January 2018, all the miners start getting these suspicious visitors to their facilities. Okay, these are people dressed as utility company people, people dressed as municipal tax people, knocking on your door, saying, "Hey, we're seeing you using a lot of power. What was the reason for this upgrade?" And anyways, when everybody was fleeing, they kind of knew that anyone upgrading power or still using their power was doing something that warranted a second look to see if they could get a free money machine, right? So because most factories were just shutting down, you see their base loads drop. Most houses were shutting down, base loads drop because people were leaving. Yet you had these pockets of increased loads. So they started miners started getting harassed by these, at the time, fake utility reps, fake municipality reps, fake police. By fake, I mean corrupt and crony. And of course, not surprisingly, the extortion threats began shortly after. I'll tell you what happened to my brother, which was the easiest way to explain it. They burst into his facility. They broke the door into his facility. Luckily, he wasn't there. They seized all of the equipment, from the fans to cool the facility, to the laptop he had there, to the LAN network equipment, to the 20-some ASICs he had in that facility. And they called him and they said, if you want your machines back, if you want to not go to jail, you need to give us $25,000 plus the machines. And my dad said, my brother says, why? I'm not doing anything illegal. Like this, why do I have to give you $25,000? Why do you need to take my machines? Well, because these machines finance terrorism. And you say, how do these machines finance terrorism? Excuse me. It's like, well, because basically they start throwing these arbitrary charges because Bitcoin mining at the time was completely unregulated. There was no regulation to define what Bitcoin was or what the activity was. And you weren't financing anything. You were just spending power and earning an asset that you kept. And so they started basically trying to scare or threat miners into giving up their equipment and outright many times stealing the equipment. So my brother, we tried to kind of find a middle ground with these people. We try to go back and forth and say, no, well, this is not like, let's get due process. Like, why jail? Like, there's not even but they said, give it to us or else, give it to us or else. Towards the end, it turns into, I know your kids go to school. I know where you live. I know your business is. You have basically until tomorrow morning to settle or you're going to jail. And I would keep my family close if I were you, right? This happens at around 8 p.m. Okay. He calls my dad and I, basically nervous crying and says, I don't know what to do. And we said, you have to go to the border. You have to leave. And so in a matter of 2 hours, he has to pack his life into a car with his wife and 2 kids and transit the most dangerous stretch of road in America or in the continental Americas, which is the
Darien Gap.
Well, not the Darien. This was from...
I'll pause there. That is insane. Now, you can wrap your head around it because you're like, oh, it's Venezuela. It's a developing country. It'll never happen somewhere else. But remember, Canada, trucker protests, 2022 or 2021, I can't remember what it was. They locked up and froze assets of people peacefully protesting. Remember, FDR and seizing gold and making that illegal. So, history doesn't repeat, but it damn sure rhymes. And you can see, and we know that people in power always crave and want more power. So if you have found a way to decouple from underneath their boot, they will do whatever they can to ensure that they can still crack that whip. So I'm not saying it can or will happen in these developed countries, but that's why Bitcoin truly is freedom money, because for every country that will shut it down, another country will embrace it, like El Salvador or Bhutan. So it's not going anywhere. It's going to always be around, and there's so many places that you can now still get that kind of free power, so to speak, off the grid, using hydro, using solar, using a volcano, whatever it happens to be, so that it will continue to be democratized, decentralized, and allow people to opt out of the fiat collapse that they're in. Let's go to the next piece so you see his whole journey started 2016, and this leads him to basically try to create a solution for this problem that him and his brother had of whenever they needed money to live off of, they had to sell their Bitcoin. And then they found out that by the time they got the money out, spent it, and wanted to get back in, they had lost so much more in time as well as price appreciation in Bitcoin. So he's like, we need a solution where I don't have to sell my Bitcoin.
We know it. So let's get to the story of Ledn. So you and Adam decide to set up a lending business. Is that right? Was that the first iteration as was? Yeah, of currency, but countries. But it's still happening, and people decide to set up a lending business. Is that right? Was that the first iteration as was? Yeah.
That's right. So we wanted to solve our own problem, which was we needed to pay our bills in fiat, but we didn't want to sell our Bitcoin. So we wanted a product where you could put your Bitcoin as collateral, get the cash you need. When you repay the cash, you get the Bitcoin back. Pretty simple, right? Same thing you can do with your house or even your phone. People lease phones and they lease all sorts of assets, but nobody was lending against Bitcoin. And I saw a huge potential in that, it was an asset that lent itself for a lot more transparency. You as a user could have a lot more visibility on what we did and make sure we did what we said we would do. The second was, it's a global asset. So if I could get it right in Canada, we could bring this product to everyone else. And that was a really exciting part for us. And the third part was because the asset was global. It was the first time in my understanding of history that I could treat you, Raoul, in the Caymans and your Bitcoin in the same way as Miguel from Baruta, which is a small town in Caracas, with his Bitcoin, because I was judging the credit quality not on you, but on your asset. And for the first time ever, your asset and his asset were the same.
Yeah, because this is the first, and I say this a lot, this is the first globally homogenous asset. Gold is the other one, I'll give it that, but gold is not as easily tradable. You have the quality standards, you don't know, it's not the same thing. But this is a truly homogenous global asset, the same in Caracas as it is in Lagos, as it is in New York City.
And you're right. And gold, by the way, gold in a vault in Venezuela is not worth the same as gold in a vault in the US. A Bitcoin and cold storage controlled by someone in Venezuela that can be sent to me is worth the exact same as the Bitcoin controlled by your cold storage that could be sent to me. The exact same. So I really can't, and this is one of the things that fills me with pride today, is that at Ledn, a person from Colombia and a person from the US applying for the same loan will get the same interest rate. And I don't think there's a single bank or financial entity in the world that can say the same thing. And that is what I think leveling the playing field is and looks like. And many people don't get that yet.
So, yeah, I didn't get that until this video, because I never thought of it in that kind of term, where it's like, yeah, no matter where you're at in the globe, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. And like he just mentioned, it's not even the same with gold, because you have purity standards, you have different carats, you have, like you said, different vaults that have different, maybe security requirements, like who knows? Plus you cannot trade it like on the open market one-to-one. Like I can't get my gold in my hand to you in another country across the internet. So because of that, like it truly does allow anybody, anywhere, to opt out, the ability to opt out of their current fiat system and get into something much more secure and sound and create long-term wealth. Like that is insane. And then him creating this lending model with Ledn, it's like, okay, yeah, now I get it. And he talks in more detail. I would highly recommend you listen to this interview, because it just gives you more insight into him and the creation of Ledn. And again, it's all about don't trust, verify, but having some insight on the person that you're lending or using their platform to loan your Bitcoin to is part of the due diligence, in my opinion, because these guys have been around. They haven't lost a single sat. They've done, I think he said they're doing 3 to 4 million in loan volume daily now as of this video in December, and they're projected to go higher than that. And it's completely transparent on the blockchain, and you have the option to allow rehypothecation or not. So once you give them your Bitcoin, you can see where it's sitting and it just stays there. And they've never lost a Satoshi, even when we had these economic downturns. Now, of course, if you don't pay attention to your balance, you can get liquidated, but that's your own damn fault. So they try to make it so that you can top up automatically. They send you notifications when there's volatility, all this stuff, but there's still that risk. So you have the risk of the market, but at least out of all the lending options I've seen so far, this is the one that has the least risky in regards to security and transparency. And this is what I'm going to be looking at going forward, is some kind of lending model, because the goal is to never have to sell your Bitcoin. And if you can roll the loan over like you can with Ledn, then that means over a long enough time horizon, the Bitcoin price appreciation will outstrip the interest of the loan, and or you'll be able to borrow additional and not make any payments on that. So the way the current Ledn loan works is you give them your collateral, Bitcoin, and 50% of that you can borrow again. So you give them $1,000 in Bitcoin, whatever the current price of Bitcoin is, you will get 500 back in USDC or sent directly to your bank within 24 hours, even on the weekends, because I've done this twice now. And then you are getting a 12.4% APR or 10.4 if you allow for rehypothecation. This accumulates daily, but you do not have to make any payments for the duration of the loan. And then at the year mark, you can choose to roll it over, or you can pay it all off, or you can pay it off early as well. So that means if you borrowed, we'll go with the easier number, sent $2,000 in collateral, borrowed $1,000, then at the end of the year, you would owe basically $124 of interest. If the Bitcoin value has increased more than this 12.4%, then you can just roll it over. And even if it hasn't, you can still roll it over and choose not to make a payment. They keep your collateral. You can't get any more out of it because your Bitcoin hasn't matured anymore. It's just maybe flat or even down some. But you can add to it or roll it over. And if Bitcoin appreciates in the next cycle, maybe it doubles, you can take out additional fiat on that initial 2,000 that you put in. So you didn't make any changes. You still have the interest, but if Bitcoin continues to grow at the average, so far it's been 50 to 60% year over year. That's the average over the last like 15 years. And Michael Saylor projects that it will, go to around 2030. So either way, even going all the way down to, let's just call it 25, your Bitcoin interest value accrues 2x more than the value of the interest for the loan that you're paying. So that means you would never have to pay back the loan at all, ever. Now, you could pay it back if you wanted to, but that's exactly what the wealthy do. They just take the money that they borrowed, buy more assets, and then roll over the debt, and then roll over the debt, and just keep getting more and more assets to bring that loan to value ratio down. I'll have to show you guys that more detail on the calculator I made, but the whole reason I brought this up is so that you could have some more insight on Ledn and the co-founder, Mauricio. So hope that gave you guys some clarity. I highly recommend you listen to this. I thought it was extremely insightful. And again, it just gives me that additional transparency to understand where he came from, his humble beginnings, and why they have been so transparent and secure in not losing any sats along the way, and why I am willing to bet on them myself. Not with all my Bitcoin, of course, but just enough to live off of month to month, or my future idea is just enough for the rent for the year. So I'll be moving to Colombia, and let's just forecast, $500 a month, which is a really nice apartment in Colombia. That's $6K for the year. Put up about $12K worth of Bitcoin initially, get the $6K out, put that on the apartment. So the apartment's paid for the whole year. Then that $500 that I would have normally spent each month, I buy Bitcoin with from my job. Put that, instead of in a savings, you put it into Bitcoin. So it was normally going to be a rent, but now it goes to Bitcoin. And you can now have that additional Bitcoin to decrease the LTV or top up the loan or whatever the case may be in the event that there is market volatility. So that's the way I'm playing it going forward. And that's the easiest way for me to test it out, with kind of a situation where I can put Bitcoin to work for me in a scenario where I immediately receive value from it. So it's not like I'm buying Bitcoin to go take a one-time vacation. It's like the Bitcoin would have paid for my house for a year. Like that, to me, is the ultimate win for crypto and Bitcoin adoption. And that's my goal, what I'll be testing within the next couple months once I move. All right, smash that HBO special, help a brother out, like, subscribe, comment down below, and until next time, live daily and achieve your impossible. See ya.
Want to pay your in real life bills with crypto? How about send crypto directly to anyone with a bank account? Spritz Finance is a decentralized solution to be your own bank and connect your crypto earnings to real world bills and payments. They do not take custody of your assets and allow support on multiple blockchains and Web3 wallets. Sign up below using my referral link and you will get $50 back when you make your first $50 bill payment with crypto. Additionally, I will be using referral bonuses to airdrop, donate, or burn based on community feedback. Sign up now.